We have to change to Gremlins now.
Stop right there, criminal scum! Nobody breaks the law on my watch!
I hate it. I hate it. Thank you so much for
Stop right there, criminal scum! Nobody breaks the law on my watch!
I don't regret it. I'd say it was worth it.
Was it though?
I'm a bird, mother... I'm a bird!
The law finally caught up. Every AAA is in trouble. That's what I want to find out. What exactly is happening? Like, I did not know what laws are being changed, but I'm assuming it's about monetization, loot boxes, and all that stuff.
Welcome back, everyone. Today's video is a true bombshell for the games industry. This is one of those things that can have true impact, so let me explain. What just happened is the European Union just rewrote the rules on premium currency in-game.
Oh, wait, it actually went through?
Really?
I did not know it actually went through. That is... I thought... Okay, I wasn't under no delusion that they would be implementing it. I just thought it's gonna take maybe like another 4 to 5 years. That's interesting. Okay.
Of course, that's the home of Ubisoft, of CD Projekt, of DICE, of Remedy, and so many other companies. And make no mistake, the new rules that they have just laid out could change gaming utterly. Actually change the games that you play. So you know those bundles where...
Okay, but not to be that guy, but I'll be that guy. Some of the gaming companies maybe should undergo quality control. You know how we have with like physical products that they have to go through quality control?
Yeah.
Maybe with the gaming stuff, there needs to be some change about that too. Because lately, the AAA and AA games that are being released, they have like a big list of testers, which makes me question what the hell are they even doing, because those games run like absolute garbage.
You've got to buy more currency than the item that you want costs, or perhaps the idea of limited time events, of no refunds and digital purchases. These are all being fought against by legislators, and when the EU takes action, it's a large enough block that it can reverberate around the world. And as evidence, how's that USB-C charger on our phone working out? There's a lot to talk about. Strap in. This one could actually, honestly, pretty f***ing good. Oddly enough, you've got EU legislation to thank for the standardized phone charger situation, and for many, the ability to play ROMs on their iPhone. That. But now we seem to have EU legislation to thank for premium currency being threatened, so here's what went on. In September 2024, the EU proposed the Digital Fairness Act that was targeting all the practices online that make using digital services miserable, and in particular, it called out dark patterns in video games as one of the targets, and that's basically the gross manipulative techniques that trick and strong-arm money out of people.
Okay, I do have to underline, when the monetization comes to skins and stuff like that, I don't have any problems with that, because do you really need a skin? No, you just want a skin. So if games want to monetize that, I don't think there should be any issues with that whatsoever. I think it's only an issue when like the game experience itself is being pay gated. Like, for example, you have to pay extra to like unlock an area for a game you already bought. I think that's a problem. I'm not talking about DLCs. I'm talking about their specific games where it's like an area is pay locked until you pay extra after you already bought it.
Obviously, especially applying to people who are not yet adults. And this is fairly weighty because in the EU alone, games are obviously big business. Revenues have been going up in the EU. Online game spending in 2018 represented 74% of turnover coming from online revenue, and 83% by 2022. That's all of those fun, dark patterns actually working and getting digital currency money out of people. But those dark patterns target the most vulnerable people the most. And there's no one more vulnerable in the eyes of the law than children. Children who spend an average of €31 a month on online games, according to data from Video Games.
Average claims spent per month on in-game extras has decreased from 39 in 2023 to 31 this year. Okay, is €31 too much a month for a kid? I don't think so. It's less than how much a kid should have, like pocket money.
Yeah, this seems like pocket money.
Yeah, I don't think it's a lot, because I'm just thinking back when I was a kid, my parents would buy me like physical games, right?
Yeah.
They'll buy me a bowl, they'll buy me like a Barbie doll.
Yeah.
And if I think about it, that would have been more than €31 a month.
Yeah.
So considering kids don't really play outside anymore, is it really that much?
Well, that's actually went down from 2023. I guess that's good. Everyone's feeling a little bit of the economic pinch, but it's not stopped the EU from taking action to protect kids, basically, from predatory premium currency models. And in situations like this, there's often a great offender, right, that is held up as an example of something doing everything wrong. So you might wonder, is it an Activision game? Is it Ultimate Team from the EA football games? Maybe it was Roblox. No, today,
Oh, I don't think you should let, like, depending on the age, you should even let your kid play like Roblox.
Yeah, no, that's not the game for them.
The amount of predatory behavior in Roblox alone, I think that's like a whole different discussion and a whole different can of worms. What games parents actually should be informed about, where there's a lot of predatory behavior from other people.
it's a game about horses. It's called Star Stable. You've probably never heard of it, but if
Yeah,
this
never
all
heard
does
of
turn
it.
out good, we'll have the horse girls to thank.
What?
This is Star Stable
Huh?
Online. It comes from a Swedish developer called Star Stable Entertainment, and it is the game that may have just rewritten rules and monetization in the
That
EU.
looks like
So,
Sims.
yeah, thanks, horse girls. Now, it turns out
Wait,
that
what?
Star Stable just uses all of the premium currency tactics in the book, which makes it a pretty awesome example, right? Especially because it is targeted at a younger audience. So, in March 24, the Swedish Consumer Agency filed a complaint with the EU-wide Consumer Protection Cooperation Network. That's a mouthful. And that complaint alleged that Star Stable Entertainment were targeting children and using harmful commercial practices that breached EU consumer regulations. Now, the findings corroborated much of those allegations. They found that the game made direct appeals to children in their ads, that they were
Okay.
using pressuring techniques like FOMO, which is particularly despicable, but
Okay, yeah, no, using FOMO on kids is deplorable.
Yeah, nah, that ain't it, bro.
I've seen some ads in the past where it's like, oh, do you want to be cooler than your friends? You have to buy this and this. I've seen those ads before. Or like ads where it's like the kids are playing with dolls and you're the one kid that doesn't have a good doll, so everyone's making fun of you, and all of a sudden like your parent buys you this extremely new doll and all the kids are like, oh my god, you're so cool now, let's be friends. I've seen those ads since the 90s and 80s and 70s. They always use those kind of ads.
when it's not, on adults. And there was a lack of transparency on purchases and loads more things. I mean, here's an example of one that's particularly rough. They were responsible for influencers promoting the game to kids without any disclosure of the spending risk. So, in short,
That's another thing that definitely needs regulation. What kind of advertisement tactic, quote unquote, influencers are using to push onto their viewers? I think there should be a regulation when it comes to that you need to disclose this type of information.
Star Stable Entertainment now have a month to address complaints and propose solutions with their game, but what matters for our purposes today is the Consumer Protection Cooperation Network, we can just call the CPCN. They have laid out what they want. So I'll spell it out via an example. This is what should happen in the ideal world. You, dear gamer, want to buy yourself a new horse. You see that your new horse costs 300 star coins. The store tells you that's around £5, so it just lets you buy 300 coins exactly. You buy
Okay.
exactly what you need for the horse, rather than the current bundles that exist of 200 coins or 400 coins, meaning that you always have to buy with some wastage, which just ends up giving the company more money. So in short, no obfuscation bullshit, no weird tactics. And worst of all for these companies, this will have them bloody well shaking. You'd have to have a refund policy, both for the coins and the horse. And none of this would be pitched as a limited time event where you have got to get the thing right now. So that's an example then of how these policies should be applied, and each is indeed a massive win for consumers. But that would not matter if this amounted to nothing. You could look at all this and think, right, so some Swedish horse game has got a slap on the wrist. No, it's more than that. This seems to have backbone. So here's the big important bit. These solutions are the backbone of what the European Consumer Organization calls key principles for trustworthy gaming environment. And these could...
I think League definitely will be hit so hard with this. Especially since there's already so much discourse about League happening where they removed every single free way of getting a skin.
Then they got backlash and they put it back in.
Cause huge problems for anyone who is using premium currency. When I say this could shake the foundations of the game industry economy, I absolutely mean it. So these, which I'm going to spell out for you, are the minimum requirements for purchasing and using virtual currencies in the EU. And what's neat is the philosophy behind them. So the CPCN considers these premium currencies as an equivalent to the real money that is used to purchase them. And that for them means that they are just as worthy of legal scrutiny. So you can see how that is in a way a mindset shift that paves the way for actually treating these as they are. So just think about the last game that you played that had a premium currency in it. Whatever that game is, I want you to keep it in mind. And with that in your mind, I'm now going to go through the various different practices that this targets. So, prices for premium currency packs that are a little more than the available product. So you've got to buy extra coins, extra gems, whatever it may be. Obfuscation of how much currency is worth by always pairing currency with other items or multiple currency options. As an example, I think World of Warcraft may actually fall for that because it includes Trader's Tender in one of the new mounts.
So honestly, this sounds like majority, not even majority, every single game that has skins, that has live service, every single game might get hit with this. That's interesting.
Bundles. Another one, a complete lack of a refund option for making currency purchases or even for in-game items. So there would have to be a refund policy. That's something none of us are used to in these games. Also, FOMO practices to encourage buying. Those are going to be looked at, so some of those may no longer be allowed. And all of these practices are now something that the EU can hold against developers and publishers, even more so if the parental controls of said game are not up to scratch. So it's less a case of me saying, can you think of...
Okay, this is something I did not think about. Games having parental control.
That will work, yeah.
That would make sense. Me and Zen, we don't have a child, right? So this is not necessarily something I even gave a thought. But it would be easier to make sure like that little shit won't steal your credit card to buy more V-Bucks if there's just a parental control there.
Think of any game that falls into those categories. And it's more me saying, can you think of a game that doesn't fall into those criteria? It's fairly humongous, which might indeed be the point here.
I can easily think about games that don't fall under this.
The refund policy?
No. Like games that don't even have buyable stuff.
It's quite a bit.
Yeah.
We know this is something the EU have been thinking about in other circumstances than just Star Stable. As an example, in September 2024, the European Consumer Organization published a report on popular online games. And in that report, they targeted Diablo 4, EA Sports FC 24, Minecraft, Fortnite, and a bunch of others. And it was all about how the virtual currencies work. They were not thrilled on what they found in those games, right? Because many of them, well, they did the same things that, Star Stable did that we do not like. And that straight up means we can say that Electronic Arts and Blizzard Entertainment are being directly targeted by this.
Color me surprised, but not really. I'm shocked. I'm shocked, I tell you.
This body. That really is something. So it's no wonder that the BEUC will be holding workshops to help European companies implement these new principles. Because it seems they may actually have to implement them. Everything that they previously thought was acceptable pretty much now isn't. And that, here's the shocking thing, that's not my commentary. That is what the industry response has been. So we know they are shaking in their boots. It ain't surprising the industry bodies aren't thrilled about this, and a big shout out to one of our Bellular Games members, Neo Nebulosa, for directing us to this stuff. So, the European Game Developers Federation and the Video Games Europe, or two groups basically, they've published a joint statement that expresses their disappointment with the findings. Let's read.
Of course they did. Of course they did. Please tell me one of them was Ubisoft.
Their statement, quote, "We are disappointed by the lack of engagement from the CPC network in creating these principles, which introduce new legal theories and misguided interpretations of EU consumer law that will create confusion and disruption for European customers." Sidebar, oh no, we're going to be disrupted by sort of annoying predatory stuff going away. What an awful disruption. Back to the statement.
This is why I'm saying, like, these companies, they don't give a damn about you. They only care about making money. So this is why I think it's so laughable when these AAA companies, they go, but think about all the people who worked on this game. We know it's a bad game, but you should feel bad for not playing. Like, come on.
Anyways. Anyways.
Will also present a challenge to the industry's future growth and could even deprive millions of consumers access to their favorite games. Now, that last bit is the interesting thing. So, understandably, right, these groups, representing the most powerful players in the industry, did quite like things the way that they were. Change is dangerous, especially to the bottom line, and especially change like this. But in a way, they're not inherently wrong. It is true that audiences do actually understand premium.
Overwatch brought back the loot box system, where you can just play and get loot boxes.
A little too late.
I'm sorry, I mean Overwatch 2. Overwatch 1 is dead. Overwatch 2 is just a slop fest. The quality of players, as in the amount of slurs and no words and TOS words that got thrown at me for simply just not even saying anything, was interesting. Let's just say it was interesting.
A lot of gamer words.
Yeah, I think Overwatch 2 is the new Xbox lobby.
Currencies by and large right now. And when implementing currencies, these companies were following, their best legal guidance, and now that guidance has changed. I guess just like how so many phones had like a bespoke charging cable until the rules just changed in the middle of the game. So now they've got to get used to these new rules. And what'll sting is the impact on their bottom line. They're not wrong about the potential impacts of all of this. Now, big companies like Ubisoft can probably absorb the costs of any legal challenges or damage from rebuilding their premium currency systems. They'll probably spend a whole lot to try and figure out ways around these principles. As for smaller companies, well, they may not find that so easy. But where things will be dramatic is the group's final warning, because it's the most threatening one. It's the idea that players in the EU may just be locked out of video games. They'd say with a game like Overwatch, right?
Wait, so if like the company doesn't abide by the new EU legislations, the people in EU cannot play the game. So it's gonna be like game censorship.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Because these companies probably not going to abide to one nation, even though that one nation is a bunch of different countries and that's a huge market.
Wow, it's gonna be a rough time for people from EU.
They would simply choose to geo-restrict access to the game
Yeah.
rather than change their monetization
But VPNs exist too.
model, or to just continue the game as normal and risk EU lawsuits. It could just be they look at the EU and think, you know what, we make enough from the States and other countries, we really don't need them. That being said, the EU population is kinda huge. Overall GDP is obviously a very, very flawed metric, but as an example, right, just Googling this here in 2024, the EU's nominal GDP was about...
Look, if this actually goes through, right, and some games are going to be geo-logged, expect to see a lot of Europeans on NA servers.
About 17.9 trillion and 1/6 of global nominal GDP, which is quite a lot of money, and a hell of a lot of that GDP globally will be in other countries like, say, China, where a lot of these companies will not be able to go in and directly monetize. That could actually mean that they will feel the need to change. And in a way, there are two wolves inside me who are fighting, right? I suppose one of them is the pragmatic wolf. The other one is the almost like the last vestiges of some sort of libertarian idealism that says, let the market decide. If the gamers do not like the bad practices, the gamers shall not partake in them, and the market will solve the problem. And I wish that was true, but I feel there's almost a faux idealism in so much of that, because these psychological hooks, these psychological triggers, they do actually work. We're in a world where you can very easily make, I think, some sound enough, philosophical arguments very much against regulation and all of that. And I totally get that.
This part is definitely mostly about my way of thinking. I think for me, it's super easy not to spend money on in-game stuff, but for a lot of people, it might not be that easy.
Yeah, it might not be easy for them.
Fairly sympathetic towards that in many cases, but the thing is, we've also got to be pragmatic, and a part of that is being a bit humble about the human condition. And the fact of the matter is, these practices are not popular. People do not like them, yet people's behavior does continue. And these obviously are bad. And as people who enjoy video games, we see that as these types of practices derive more and more revenue, they then become what the companies focus on. And that is worse for the actual video games. Because I suppose in a way, how much of game industry revenue comes essentially from psychological manipulation and these various business strategies that are designed to rake in revenue in a way that's not like really tied to the experience of a game that you purchase. We've just seen the share of that increase and increase and increase, and it's no wonder that as that is increased, the rest of us have become less and less satisfied with games. So in a way, if this does hurt the revenue of a bunch of companies and unfortunately leads to a bunch of job losses because these types of practices are...
Make a interesting game. Wait, hold on. I just realized my comment was pretty fucking stupid. Wait, so if your company is held afloat only by predatory monetization, wouldn't that mean that, one, your company is overbloated, that you have too many people as it is, to a point where without the predatory practices, you cannot get enough revenue to pay everyone? But that's it. I don't know. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm even confused why they even are doing that.
Are no longer viable. Good riddance. Good riddance, absolutely. Let the companies fail, let those jobs go down. How we run things should be a dialogue between the private and public sectors, and in a case like this, I think it's an example of the public sector, right? The people essentially saying, we actually do not like this practice. We don't want this to be the rules of the game. We want the rules of the game to change, to be more robust. And yeah.
I mean, what would be the excuse of not wanting to adjust it? Like, technically speaking, what would be the excuse? Because I don't know what they could even say to be like, oh, we cannot change it.
The market will, once it adapts to that, find a solution. And if the new rule set is a better rule set, then that should be a net good. But of course, none of this will matter if there's no enforcement. Enforcement, because one country making a digital consumer policy often will find difficulty in enforcing it because you're just one little guy, Mr. Belgium, right? That's why even though Belgium has banned loot boxes...
Damn. Am I singling out Belgium like that?
Damn, bro.
Just literally, you're a single guy, Mr. Belgium. What you gonna do? See? What the was that?
So many games simply just ignore that and still operate in the country. Like in World of Warcraft in the new raid, one of the bosses is basically a slot machine boss. We always have the joke that for the person in our team that's in Belgium, that boss just can't drop any loot. I don't know, there's an EU firewall or a Belgian firewall. That's a joke, but you get the point. As much as...
Okay, so the British have a problem with Belgium. Is it because it also starts with a B? Like, you cannot use a B, we use B. No, okay, I'm gonna shut up.
Many people have kind of went, Belgium, you, take him down. It hasn't really mattered because it's just Belgium, just one little guy. It's a bit different here, though. And that's because the EU is, 26 other countries, and also Belgium. In 2020.
Yo, that's crazy work, man.
Leave Belgium alone, you savage.
It was worth 25.7 billion euro in game revenues. That's a lot of revenues. And we know that their legislators are willing to take on the likes of Apple and Google when their rulings are being defied. They have done that. But more than that, the companies inside the EU are, part of a big global network, and that does mean that whenever USB-C cables become standardized in the EU, they then become standardized everywhere because of manufacturing limitations. I'm sure Apple would have loved to have continued just selling people lightning adapters in the States, but ultimately they seem to have saw the way the wind was blowing.
Also, who the hell was the genius who thought about that at Apple? You see, this is why Android phones are superior.
No, they wanted that money.
Like with Android phones, you have a jack for your headset and you have a port for your charger. You don't have to pick one or the other or get an adapter for your headset.
And made the big change to USB-C. No one wanted to have, of course, a whole factory just making EU-only phones. And again, thinking about the impact that would have had on the, the whole ecosystem of manufacturing partners, blah, blah, blah. So you can see how with hardware, it does kind of make sense. We can see those software examples where it's not really the same thing. It's not like you can just go and get an emulator for your iPhone in America, but you can in the EU. So the question then is, will developers want to risk losing a large slice of that EU-derived money?
Wait, the revenue generated by the video game industry in 2023 in 5 key markets is 25.7 billion euro. A steady 5% growth from 2022. Okay.
Or will they simply have to ship a cut down and less exploitative version of their in-game monetization to European countries? If so, it puts them in a fun little dilemma where the American gamer may get a transparently worse deal than, say, the European gamer. And then you can say, well, compare your store to mine. My one is a bit more respectful.
I mean, honestly, it's about time.
Doesn't have
The Europeans and UK people have been overcharged for games compared to US for long enough. It's time to take it all back.
as much FOMO, doesn't have as many tricksy bundles and things that basically feel like a scam. And that'll be a bad look. That's the dilemma that these companies face, and in a way, it's all thanks to a game about horses.
How did the horses do to his song? Look.
These companies face.
That's so disturbing.
And in a way, it's all thanks to a game.
What was that?
What the hell?
What was that? Was that necessary? Why is it doing
That's
that?
the dilemma that these companies face, and in a way, it's all thanks to a
Why would you do that? What?
game about horses. So, hero of the day, horse girls. I guess that's a thing. Okay, tell you what though, if you want another story, another big...
Okay, so he has a problem with Belgium and horse girl. Good video though.
Good video.